everybody. Get ready for today's session. This session is going to blow your mind. If you are not familiar with our speaker, I will suggest that you grab a piece of paper and a pen because you are definitely going to want to take notes. Today, we have Krimitsos. He is the brain behind the Podcast Export, the largest and most successful podcast event in the country. One super fun thing about Chris is that, Chris, you hold the Guinness World Record title for the largest attendance for a virtual podcast conference in 1 week. And one thing that is really impressive is that you are a leading expert on podcasting and on-demand video. So welcome and thank you for joining us at the Post-Pandemic Pivot Summit. And today we're here to speak about your book, Starting Ugly. That is a remarkable book for any entrepreneur in any stage of their journey. So welcome.
Claudia, thanks for having me. And I'm excited to talk about Start Ugly. It's not every day I get to talk about the book. And it's something I'm very passionate about.
Well, your book has been instrumental in my own personal journey and to many people that I work with and coach in their entrepreneurial journey. It is truly a roadmap that allows entrepreneurs to continually remind ourselves of the importance of remain innovators in our practice, and don't forget to start ugly with new ideas, new products in order to stay competitive. So I'm so glad that we are together. I know that in the book, there's a tremendous amount of stories that make it really relatable to any of us, but you offer a very specific roadmap in the book that I'm hoping that we can do a little bit of deep dive today, and you can walk us through the 7 steps that you outline for an entrepreneur to really establish a bedrock of sustainability.
Yeah, so I came up on the concept of Start Ugly in that it's a fundamental principle in life that we all have to start. And, you know, I have 2 little girls, and I remember when I was very present to when the second one was born, because I knew it would be the last time probably I'll see a little child go from crawling to walking to, and what you realize is early on in life, we are always constantly pushing the boundaries. And as parents, we always want to make sure the little one doesn't get hurt. But the little one, we're conditioned to start ugly continually. As we get older, the experimentation of starting ugly hurts. There's a lot of pain associated with it. Mental pain, really, more than physical pain. And a few years back, I was talking to a group of entrepreneurs, and this was before videos were on cell phones, like you could make videos, and I had a little Sony camera. And they would always ask me, what kind of camera do you use? And then they would say, how do you do this stuff? And I knew it wasn't the camera, it was the action that made the difference. It didn't matter what camera I was going to use. And in exasperation, I said to them, just start ugly. But the way I said it, I was kind of embarrassed because I was kind of like, I felt like I said it in a start ugly, like that's how you start. And someone raised their hand. They go, Chris, I have a question. I go, yes. Can you tell me more about Start Ugly? There's nothing more than that other than the phrase. But I knew that it resonated because it's not a pretty phrase, but it definitely makes you stop. And like, what does that mean? So if you want, I'll go into the 7-point system.
Well, I would love for you to go into the 7-point system. I just want to comment quickly that this is very timely. I know your book has been out for a while, but I think we're living in a special time in our history. After this pandemic, many of us have left careers or had to start ugly in a new venture for ourselves. We needed to look at what we were doing and reinvent ourselves in many ways. So a lot of the audience, it's exactly in that space, right? We are all starting ugly, whatever we are aware of it or not, there's where we are. So I think that what you're about to share with us can help us refrain our thinking, because you could start ugly without knowing it and miss the opportunity to grow in the process.
Yeah, and honestly, Claudia, in this conversation that we're having, I want to be very clear. The book is about a fictional characters, but it takes place 100 years ago. So I was trying to figure out how could I take something so timeless that you could read it today and it applies to everything. Because originally we were going to call it future proof your business, and I was going to go into all the technologies, but the problem with the technologies, by the time we write about it, literally, and the book goes to print,
Everything is obsolete.
it's obsolete immediately. So we said, how can we get this point across? And then I said to myself, I'm not a big, I don't know how I explain this, but I don't like telling people what to do. But I do like saying, what's a foundational principle? I think anyone listening to this would agree, like the way you start is almost always ugly. Even if it's a good start, it still is an ugly start compared to where you go a year from now if you keep perfecting what you started. So I tried to figure out, and it's on page 78, 79 of the book, how can I create just a one-page guide? So if someone said, oh, I like this, but now what do I do with this information? And I want to credit my wife, because she said, like, you have to give a guide. So I was like, well, I don't want to know. I don't want to tell anyone how to do stuff, but there is some foundational principles. So I'll go through the 7 points.
Excellent.
The first point is identify an opportunity or a new way of doing things. So we left this open-ended. It's for entrepreneurs, but it's also for people working in a job that want to innovate within their job. We think it's just as present. Obviously, I'm an entrepreneur, so it speaks to me. But we said, how about if someone is not necessarily an entrepreneur, but they're in a place where they want to innovate? So identify an opportunity or a new way of doing things. So an opportunity could be as simple as, hey, there's an opportunity in this podcasting space to start a show, or I could sell this product on Etsy that no one else is selling. Could be all kinds of stuff. Could be there's an opportunity at work where I could innovate something. But once you identify it, you're aware of it. The step 2 is research what you're getting into and set a time limit for that research. So the key on that is not the research. Everybody that does anything usually researches, but it's setting a time limit. And that's the key, because most of us could research for 10 years and not start something. By setting a time limit, we don't allow ourselves to get bogged down trying to prepare for every eventuality. And that does happen. People are like, what if this? What if that? What if that? We can't deal with what ifs. We're not in reality yet. We're all in our head. So we must set a time limit for how much research is allowable, and let's get started.
I love that because, I'm sorry, just a quick comment. I love that because as an entrepreneur, especially when you're taking your first step into it, that's the piece when you could just freeze and never do anything about it, right? You have notes and notes and notes and books that you have written yourself about what could be your idea if it came to fruition. But that is one of the pivotal places where you just freeze and do anything. So the time limit, it's brilliant.
So yeah, you have to set a time limit, whatever you're comfortable with, but must have a time limit. Now, the key is I doubt anyone will put a 10-year time limit. They're going to set a month, 2 months, could be whatever. So the time limit has to be realistic and actionable. 3, create a minimal viable thing, whatever that is. So something you're proud to share with the world. Don't get stuck on perfection. So a minimal viable thing is what you're happy with creating and comfortable with creating to then put out into the world. So we don't really care what it is, but we're now going from time limits on your thinking to setting an action plan to starting to execute something. Okay. 4 is commit to a launch date to make it real, make it public by telling people. So that for me, I know you read the book, but there's a piece in the book where a friend of mine got tired of me talking about me writing this book. He literally went on Facebook without my knowledge and said, so excited for Chris. He's having a book launch party. We were like in the month of April. And I'd like to say, he said on August 8th or something like that, Chris is going to have a party. So I'm getting all these notifications. A couple of people text me, hey, congrats. And I was like, well, what are you talking about? Oh, your book launch party. And then I found the post. He goes, oh, and my friend said, I hope you're not upset with me. And I said, what better friend could you have than one that's helping you execute? So even for me in the Start Ugly book, I procrastinated and I had a friend so we know that so you must set a public launch. So for us in the book, we set a launch date. Now I want to be very clear. I didn't hit my launch date, but I launched a week later. Like I was ready a week later. So the launch date helped me move to action to get everything just about done. So that was really a jolt for me. And that's a really great thing. 5, start ugly and launch. So you have to be okay with nothing's going to be perfect, but it's going to be good enough for you to launch once you have your launch date, right? 6, this is probably the most important thing, Claudia. And this is I think this is a big thing in Western cultures, but especially in the US. in a driven culture. And I'll explain what this means. Step 6 is set check-in dates to assess. So A, if you determine you don't like what you started, stop. Congratulations. You don't have to think about it anymore. So what people don't realize, especially in American culture, people feel that stopping something means you failed. Technically, you've succeeded in taking something out of your mind. You know now something about that, and you've learned that it's not for you. So now you can move on to the next project. Part B of 6 is if you love what you're doing, decide what your endeavor will become. A new business, a new division, a side hustle, a hobby, etc. Set milestones accordingly. And then step 7, create systems and work towards perfect execution. And then, of course, start all over again and innovate and start ugly again. So that's really, it goes from innovating to creating to refining to repeating. And, that's the chart right there. Very simple in how we do everything. Yeah.
I love this. I love it. I mean, the book itself, as you mentioned, it is full packed with incredible resources. Those 2 pages, it is very rare that one will get a book in how to and actually get the how to. So
in 2 pages, yeah, very simple too.
Exactly, that you could constantly utilize. So Chris, this has been super helpful for me personally, but I wonder, I heard the rumors that there is the next stage of work coming after this phenomenal book that has revolutionized the experience for many entrepreneurs like me and many others. So do you have any time to share with us your next step?
Yeah, so the next step is a lot of people now, let's say they're entrepreneurs or they're trying to build their business or their network. They need to know now, how do I create a sphere of influence from scratch? And I created a Udemy course with a good friend of mine, and Udemy is a platform that sells online courses. It's very low cost. I think it's under $20 or something. I don't even know what the price is, honestly, but we created it. Larry is taking charge of it, but it teaches you how to do what's called the e-introduction. So when I moved from New York to Florida, I didn't know anyone. And what I did was I would go to an event and meet one person, and I would reach out to that person. And over time, by going to a lot of events, I would realize, hey, that person I met last week should connect with the person I met this week. And I would create in the subject line, let's say, Claudia, I'm introducing you to Jeffrey. I would say, Claudia, e-intro to Jeffrey. And then I would say, Claudia, Jeffrey does X, Y, Z, blah, blah, blah. And Jeffrey, this is what Claudia does. Based on your 2 respective interests, I think you should get on meet one another to discuss how you could support one another and be mutually beneficial. Well, I got so good at these e-intros, I would average about 20 a week. Wow. for like, I did it for like years. I mean, I've sent thousands of them out. Every day now I wake up, there's the introductions in my inbox from the karma of doing that. But one thing I will tell you, and this is something I learned, most people, when they're trying to build their business up, they don't see value in making connections that don't directly benefit them in the moment. And I think that's a very big mistake, because we live in a very social economy where people know each other, like each other, and connect with one another. If you could become the most valuable person by connecting all these people, what usually happens is they'll say, Claudia, thank you so much for that connection. Is there any way I could help you? And then you will train that person to say, I work in this field. If you see anything like this, please let me know, or send me an introduction to anyone that's in your sphere of influence. And before you know it, you'll have a full slate of appointments. So when I used to have an empty calendar, I would literally fill it up with people, and I would meet them, and I would try and figure out how I could help them. And eventually the calendar became full of leads for me down the road because I had helped so many people. And I think the introduction is revolutionary in helping people build their contact sphere in today's age.
That is so powerful. And I'm so grateful that you had put a course together for that, because in this space where we are, yes, we live in a very social space, but a very virtual space. So it's a little bit harder to, network or to build those relationships. So that is a tremendous asset for an entrepreneur. And I know that in your case, first of all, you mentioned karma a few minutes ago, and I just don't want to let this opportunity go to recognize how really you are the embodiment of karma and generosity. You obviously are an incredibly successful entrepreneur that has built a tremendous, many channels of successful ventures. And here you are participating in our summit and giving time to a community that is probably meeting you for the first time. So that is a message that we hear loud and clear of generosity, of really going out of our way to make those connections, to be grateful for others and to learn from others. So I really want to recognize that from you, Chris. It's a really big lesson that you're teaching us today, in addition to your outstanding roadmap in your book, and soon for us to enjoy your training. So I am so grateful for that gift.
Claudia, thank you for having me on. Start Ugly is up on Amazon. There's a lot of used copies, so if anyone's restricted financially, grab a used copy. There's all kinds of good prices, but I do recommend the hard copy because we created the book for one specific reason: for you to pay it forward after you're done with it, but also to have a copy in your office so the words Start Ugly stare back at you and help you be more productive. So literally the cover is designed to help innovate people to get out of their own way, to have it somewhere. So they always are reminded, like, let me not get stuck in perfection, or let me not be afraid of starting something new. And I agree with you wholeheartedly. We live in a world right now where if you're not starting ugly, you will get left behind, because you mentioned something about the gig economy, or just the new way of doing things. We're seeing labor shortages everywhere right now. I believe that was going to happen anyways. It happened much quicker. And now people are questioning their existence and what they want to do in the world. And that's like an awakening. And I think if you could adopt Start Ugly as a philosophy, I know that you'll find what it is you're looking for much quicker. And that's what I hope for, anyone that's looking for a message like the book Start Ugly.
I love that you actually practice what you say. I could see in the back of your book. So it's great that even you keep Start Ugly in your practice every day.
Well, the more successful you get, the harder it is to start ugly, because your ego is tied to the success that you've achieved. So I do deal with very successful business owners. They always tell me I don't need to start ugly. And I usually tell them, if that's what you think, you probably do, because someone's out innovating you without you knowing it yet.
That's the one lesson that I took so wholeheartedly in your book. Regardless of what you define as success in your own personal venture, there is somebody that is doing better today than you are, and you got to keep up with it. Chris, before we get off, I just want to mention that this year your conference is actually in person again. You have a virtual component, but you will have an in-person conference again. So you want to tell us just a little bit about it?
Yeah, PodFest, for anyone learning to be a podcaster, podfestexpo.com. We will have our in-person conference as well as virtual, but I would just get on podfestexpo.com, get in the email inbox, and you'll get updates of what we do. And we have the PodFest Messenger sending out updates about the industry of podcasting. But the main thing, Claudia, I think, support Claudia, what she's doing. She's obviously stepping up as a leader, helping people all across the country and probably the world. With virtual things, and what I've learned is now you're serving the world. You never know who's going to find it. So it's pretty cool that boundaries no longer, geographic boundaries no longer really count. So you never know how a piece of content will find someone out there. So I appreciate you and honor what you're doing.
Thank you, Chris. I so appreciate having you. And thank you for joining us today. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Claudia. Bye now.
Bye.